She owned the jet, had the receipts, and still got told, "You can't be her," because sometimes the truth isn't enough when you don't look like the stereotype. It was already 83 degrees when Danielle Monroe stepped out of the black SUV at the private jet terminal in Miami. She pulled her sunglasses down over her eyes, shielding them from the morning sun, then adjusted the cuff of her navy blue travel suit. Her heels clicked against the tarmac as she walked with purpose. Smooth, sure, practiced. She was used to moving through the world like this. Controlled, efficient, invisible, until necessary. Danielle had just wrapped a panel at the Women Who Build conference. 3 packed days of keynotes, mentorships, and business pitches. She'd stayed up till 1 a.m. reviewing seed rounds for a young founder from St. Louis, then still showed up early the next morning to speak about resilience in leadership. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was the one people came to see. As she approached the plane, her assistant Simone's voice chirped through the Bluetooth earpiece in her ear. They filed the flight plan. Weather's clean all the way back to Birmingham. Snacks on board. Oh, and the pilot is new, not the usual guy. Danielle stopped at the base of the steps leading to the jet. A tall man with a neatly pressed uniform and dark aviators stood halfway down, clipboard in hand. The name tag read Kessler. He gave her a tight-lipped smile, forced, not unfriendly, but rehearsed. "Good morning. This flight is reserved for Ms. Danielle Monroe," he said flatly, flipping through the pages on his clipboard without making eye contact. Danielle blinked, confused for half a second. "Yes, I'm Danielle Monroe." Kessler didn't respond right away. He looked up slowly, his eyes scanning her face, then her outfit, then the branded laptop bag slung across her shoulder. He chuckled, not loudly, but enough to be heard. "I'm sorry," he said, straightening his shoulders. "There must be a mistake. This jet's already been assigned to a passenger. Ms. Monroe is the primary on the manifest." Danielle stood there, not moving. "Yes? That's me, Danielle Monroe, founder of Vector Hive. The jet is mine." His face twitched, and for a second he looked like he wanted to apologize, but didn't. Instead, he stepped in front of the stairs, gently but firmly blocking her way. "I'm going to have to ask you to step back while we sort this out. You understand. Security protocols." Danielle's pulse quickened, but she didn't shout, didn't argue. She reached into her blazer pocket and calmly pulled out her ID, the digital charter receipt on her phone, and even a photo of her on the same plane 2 weeks ago. "I get it. You're doing your job," she said carefully. "But this is my plane. Everything's in order." He didn't even look at the documents, just glanced at her phone, frowned, and said, "We've had cases of imposters before. I'll need to verify through corporate." There was a pause, the kind of silence that only feels loud when it's heavy with judgment. Danielle took a breath. "So if I were a white guy in khakis and boat shoes, you'd be handing me champagne right now." The pilot's jaw moved slightly, but he didn't answer. Instead, he radioed someone in the terminal, speaking in low tones. Danielle stared past him at the plane that bore her name, literally. The last 3 letters of the tail number were DMO. It was hers. She'd worked 16-hour days for 7 years to make it so. And yet here she was, being told, politely, that she couldn't possibly belong. She glanced down at her phone and hit speed dial. Simone picked up on the first ring. "We've got a situation," Danielle said. But just when she thought it couldn't get more ridiculous, things took a turn that would leave her stunned. Simone didn't even hesitate. "I'll call Charter Direct right now." Danielle hung up and looked back up at the pilot, who was now joined by a second man, an older ground operations manager with a salt and pepper beard and a clipboard of his own. He glanced at Danielle, then at Kessler, and walked right past her to speak in hushed tones with the pilot. Danielle crossed her arms, watching both of them. Neither had made any effort to acknowledge her as the person most affected by this whole absurd scene. Finally, the manager turned to her, voice overly polite. "Ma'am, we're just trying to confirm a few things. This will only take a moment." She met his gaze squarely. "And while you confirm a few things, what exactly am I supposed to do? Sit out here on the tarmac and wait for someone to remember I own this plane?" He gave a small shrug, not unkindly. Just standard verification, ma'am. Danielle's patience was draining. Standard for who? Neither of them answered. Inside the terminal, passengers were boarding flights without being stopped. A white woman in yoga pants and a designer tote had just walked straight through security with a nod. No clipboard, no questions. Danielle took a slow breath, trying to keep her voice steady. I've had this charter service on contract for 3 years. I fly out of Birmingham every other week. I don't just use this plane, I lease it. I pay the salaries. That includes yours. Kessler finally looked up. You're saying you are Danielle Monroe? Danielle looked at him like he had just asked if water was wet. Yes, and I've said it 4 times now. He tilted his head slightly. I'm just having trouble believing that. There it was. Not security protocol. Not a missing confirmation. Just disbelief. Raw and unfiltered. Danielle lowered her voice. And why is that? Say it, out loud. He didn't. He wouldn't. He glanced at the ground ops manager again, but even he took a step back, suddenly looking uncomfortable. Danielle stepped forward, this time slowly, deliberately. You know what bothers me the most? She said, voice like steel. Not that you assumed I didn't belong. I'm used to that. I've had people doubt me in boardrooms, during investor meetings, even on panels where I was the keynote speaker. But this is different. Kessler narrowed his eyes slightly, bracing himself. You looked at me, she continued, and decided I couldn't be her. Not even by mistake. Not even by chance. Because your idea of who belongs here doesn't look like me. He shifted, clearly uncomfortable now. That's not... Look, I didn't mean it like that. Danielle nodded. But you did. You just didn't think I'd call it out. Her phone vibrated again. Simone, Danielle answered instantly. Talk to me. I just spoke to Charter Direct's head of operations, Simone said quickly. They're furious. The CEO is calling you in 2 minutes. Do not move from where you are. Danielle smiled for the first time that morning, but there was no joy behind it. She turned the phone slightly so the men could hear. My assistant is on the phone with your bosses, she said, and the only thing you should be verifying right now is how fast you can apologize. But before anyone had time to say a word, a silver sedan rolled up behind them, and out stepped someone who would flip the whole situation on its head. The silver sedan door opened, and out stepped Rhea Kinley, a regional flight liaison for Charter Direct, in a sharp maroon suit and low black heels. She didn't smile. She didn't ask questions. She walked with purpose, holding a tablet in one hand and her phone in the other. Danielle exhaled quietly. She knew Rhea. Kessler didn't. Who's this? He asked, stepping forward, still guarding the plane steps like it was some kind of vault. Rhea didn't break stride. Rhea Kinley. I'm with corporate. You must be the new pilot. Kessler straightened slightly. Yes, ma'am. First week on the Monroe route. Well, congratulations, she said without warmth. We'll talk about your future shortly. Danielle folded her arms, watching them. Rhea turned toward her. Ms. Monroe, I'm so sorry. This should never have happened. Danielle didn't say anything yet. She wanted to hear how Kessler would try to clean up the mess. He cleared his throat. I was just trying to follow proper identity procedures. She had everything, Rhea cut in. Her ID, her charter receipt, her digital contract. And if you had simply scanned the QR on her phone, like the protocol you apparently skipped over in onboarding, you'd have seen her name match the manifest and aircraft registration instantly. Kessler's face flushed. I was trying to avoid a security breach. She's the one who paid for the jet. He opened his mouth again, but this time the ground ops manager finally backed away completely, as if wanting no part in the fallout. Danielle finally spoke. He told me, to my face, that he didn't believe I could be me. Rhea looked back at the pilot, expression flat. Is that true? He hesitated. I didn't say it like that. But you said it. He looked down at the pavement. Rhea let the silence stretch. Then she stepped aside and turned to Danielle. Would you like to board now? Danielle nodded once. Yes, I would. As she moved past the men and placed one foot on the stairs, Kessler blurted out, I didn't mean to offend anyone. It's not about race. Danielle stopped, turned halfway, and tilted her head. Then what was it about? My height? My haircut? He didn't respond. She kept going, step by step, until she reached the top and turned back around. Her voice was clear, but calm. You looked at a black woman in a suit, holding all the right documents, and your brain short-circuited. I've been through TSA with fewer questions. The truth is, if I were a tall white man with a Patagonia vest and a golf bag, you'd have offered to carry my luggage. Rhea, still on the tarmac, didn't even blink. Mr. Kessler, leave your badge and credentials with the operations desk inside. He looked stunned. Wait, are you firing me? You'll be contacted by HR, she said. That's all I can tell you, for now. Kessler stood there, frozen, for just a beat longer, like he still didn't believe what was happening. Danielle sat down inside the jet, buckled in, and looked around at the interior she'd designed herself. Cream leather, black walnut trim. A small brass plate near the cabin door read, Monroe. Her name, her space. And yet, even here, someone had tried to push her out. She pulled out her phone and opened the camera app. She wasn't the type to go live. But today? Today was different. She started recording. I'm sitting on my jet, after being told I wasn't me, after showing everything, ID, receipt, contract, and still, they didn't believe it, all because I didn't look like what they expected. She paused, staring into the lens. I wonder how many women, how many black women especially, go through things like this every day, but no one sees it, no one believes it until the camera's on. She hit stop, but what she didn't expect was how fast the world would respond when she finally shared it. The jet hadn't even taken off before the video started spreading. Danielle posted it on her private account first, just to share with friends, other women in her network. Within an hour, it had been reposted by 3 different business leaders she'd mentored over the years. Then a journalist in Dallas picked it up. Then a popular activist account. Then an actor. By the time she landed in Birmingham, her name was trending. But before the internet caught fire, there was one call, a personal one, that struck a deeper nerve. It came mid-flight. Danielle was sipping water and trying to clear her head when the flight attendant leaned in quietly. There's a call for you from Charter Direct's CEO. Secure line. Danielle slipped on the headset, not quite sure what to expect. Ms. Monroe, the voice came through, low and steady. This is Douglas Tran. I'm calling to offer my sincerest apology. He sounded real, not robotic, not scripted. I reviewed the footage myself, he continued. I also read the transcript from the pilot's comms with the terminal team. It's clear you were profiled, and it's equally clear that we failed you, not just as a customer, but as a human being. Danielle didn't respond right away. She wanted to hear the rest. He continued, We're terminating the pilot effective immediately. That decision's already been made, but I'm not calling about PR. I wanted to call as a father. Danielle's eyebrows lifted slightly. My daughter's 16, he said. Half black, half Vietnamese. Last year, she was stopped by a mall security guard who didn't believe she bought the dress she was wearing. She had the receipt in her bag. Still, they accused her. Danielle let out a soft breath. That hit different. Tran's voice softened. I can't fix what happened, but I want you to know it matters. It matters that you spoke up. It matters that you didn't stay quiet. She sat with that for a moment, eyes fixed on the clouds outside the window. I didn't plan on filming anything, she finally said. But the look on his face, the certainty that I couldn't be who I said I was, that stayed with me. And it's not just about me. It's about what that kind of thinking costs us. It costs a lot, Tran replied. Talent, peace, trust. A silence passed between them. This one felt mutual, respectful. I'd like to fly out and meet you in person, he added. Not to save face, just to listen. No press, no cameras, just us. Danielle nodded, though he couldn't see it. I'll think about it. They exchanged a few more words, clear, direct, grounded, and then she took off the headset and leaned back. Her heart was still pounding, not from the confrontation, but from something else. A slow boil of questions that had no clean answers. How many times had she worked twice as hard for half the trust? How many people got away with doubting her just because they were able to smile while doing it? She thought back to the pilot's voice. Polite, measured, cold. "You're saying you are Danielle Monroe?" The nerve of that. She didn't want revenge. That wasn't her style. But she did want the truth to hang in the air for once, uninterrupted. She scrolled back to the video, rewatching her own face. Calm, clear, focused. Her inbox was filling up. DMs, emails, a few media requests already. But one message stopped her mid-scroll. It was from a woman named Taryn Holt, someone she didn't know. It read, "I watched your video from my car in the Target parking lot and cried. 2 months ago, a cop asked me why I was driving a Tesla, and if it was mine. I didn't film it. I just said yes and drove off. I wish I had done what you did. Thank you for making me feel seen." Danielle stared at it, fingers hovering over the screen. But she didn't realize that message would only be the first of thousands, each one carrying a story like hers. Some worse, some quieter, all real. Danielle had spent her career turning complex tech problems into clean, scalable systems. But what happened that day? There was no neat algorithm for that. By the next morning, the video had been viewed over 2.6 million times. She didn't say much in it, just 45 seconds of quiet truth. But somehow, that hit harder than any angry rant ever could. The internet didn't just react, it roared. People shared their own stories. A black real estate agent locked out of a gated community because security thought he was lost. A Latina doctor asked if she was the nurse. An Indian woman questioned in first class on a Delta flight. Story after story, thread after thread. It was as if Danielle's voice had turned on a microphone in a room full of people who'd been whispering the same thing for years. Still, she didn't expect the next part. 2 days after the flight, Charter Direct released an official statement. But it wasn't the usual empty PR fluff. It was different. They didn't bury it behind a long caption. They didn't sugarcoat it. The title said it all. "We failed Danielle Monroe. Here's why that matters." It wasn't defensive. It was uncomfortable. Honest. They admitted their internal systems relied too heavily on visual confirmation. That new hires weren't trained in implicit bias. That the protocol wasn't broken. It just wasn't built for someone like her. They ended with something no one expected. A commitment to let Danielle speak to the entire board. And when they offered her that chance, she took it. 3 days later, she sat at a long rectangular table in a glass-walled boardroom in San Diego, across from 8 faces, some tense, some curious, all quiet. No filters, no press, just her voice. She stood, hands in her pockets, wearing the same travel suit from Miami. "I'm not here for a payout, and I don't need you to build me a scholarship in my name," she said. "I'm here because I built something, and I got treated like a fraud in front of my own jet. That should scare every single one of you, not because of what it means for your brand, but because of what it says about how your people see black women in places we've earned." Someone at the end of the table shifted in his chair. Danielle didn't flinch. Bias is not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, clean, smiling, dressed in a pilot's uniform. And it hides in places you don't audit, like assumptions. Another board member cleared her throat. "We're looking into new training models." "That's not enough," Danielle interrupted. "If your training doesn't touch on lived experience, it's just another checkbox. Bias isn't a bug, it's baked in. And if you don't rebuild the code, it just keeps running in the background." There was a pause, and then someone spoke, softly. It was a board member named Elijah Kim, a man in his 60s who hadn't said a word until now. "My wife is black," he said. "She's been followed in stores. Once, a neighbor asked her if she was the help, and I didn't really understand how bad it felt until she stopped telling me about it. The silence that followed was heavy, but not hostile. Danielle gave a small nod. "This isn't about canceling people," she said. "It's about accountability. Because if the system doesn't believe people like me belong, then people like me are forced to prove we do. Every single day. In every single room." By the end of the meeting, the board agreed to a top-down review of their hiring, vetting, and training processes. Danielle wasn't holding her breath, but it was a start. As she stepped out of the building and into the California sun, her phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from a man named Cedric in Arizona. "You didn't ask to be the example, but thank you for becoming one anyway." Danielle smiled faintly. She didn't feel like an example. She just felt tired. But the story wasn't finished, not yet. Because the moment she stopped trying to protect everyone's comfort, something unexpected happened. The truth didn't just spread. It stuck. A week after it all happened, Danielle stood in her backyard, phone in hand, watching her dog chase squirrels around the edge of the fence. She hadn't opened her email in 2 days. She needed space. But the world hadn't stopped talking. And this time, it wasn't just talking about her. It was talking about what her moment represented. CNN called. NBC wanted to do a sit-down. A talk show offered to fly her out to Los Angeles. She said no to all of it. Not because she wasn't grateful, but because she didn't want her face to be a symbol people pointed to without understanding the weight behind it. A neighbor she barely knew waved over the fence that morning. "I saw your video," she said. "I showed it to my teenage son. He needed to see that." Danielle thanked her, smiled politely, then went back inside. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't sad either. But she was aware, more than ever, of how much work still had to be done. Not just on a company level, but on a human level. It was never about one pilot, or one mistake, or one uncomfortable morning in Miami. It was about all the moments that came before that one. The job interviews where she was overqualified. The meetings where she was mistaken for the assistant. The raised eyebrows when she introduced herself as the CEO. The way people looked at her husband when he picked her up in her Porsche. It added up. Every time. That's why she recorded the video. Not to go viral, not to make headlines, but because staying quiet started to feel like giving permission. The craziest part? Her inbox was still filling with messages. Strangers, colleagues, mothers, teenagers, some black, some not, all of them with stories. And all of them saying the same thing. "Thank you for saying something when I couldn't." Later that evening, Simone called. "Just checking in. How you holding up?" Danielle sank into the couch and pulled a blanket over her lap. "I'm tired, but not sorry." "You shouldn't be." There was a pause. "You know," Simone added, "we always say representation matters, but what you did, that wasn't just representation. That was resistance. That was reclaiming space." Danielle didn't say anything for a second. Then, "It shouldn't have to be resistance. I should just be able to get on a plane." Simone sighed. "You're right. But we're not there yet." They sat in silence for a beat. Then Danielle asked, "Did we ever hear back from Rhea?" "Oh, yeah," Simone said. "She sent flowers and a handwritten note. Said you reminded her why she took the job in the first place." Danielle smiled a little. "That's good." The sun was setting through her window now. Orange light spilled across her living room floor. Her dog, now curled up by the fireplace, let out a sleepy grunt. Danielle reached for her journal, something she hadn't touched in months, and scribbled down a few lines. "I didn't choose the moment, but I chose what to do with it." And that was enough for now. Because the real story wasn't what happened in Miami. It was what people saw in that story, what it said about where we are, and what it reminded us about who we still need to become. Sometimes all it takes is one moment, one person saying, "This isn't okay." And suddenly other people start remembering they can speak too. So if something like this has ever happened to you, don't shrink, don't second-guess yourself. You deserve to take up space. Say your name, own your story. Now it's your turn. Have you ever been made to feel like you didn't belong in a space you earned? Tell your story in the comments. Somebody out there needs to hear it.